I never mentioned this, but I invite you all to be more, if you want, of course, to be asking questions or posting things, or just if you want to be active on my page on Facebook.
Okay.
Just so that we can use it as a platform. There is also a group which I set it up, but it's not really my group only. It's just for everyone that's interested in psychological astrology. It's called Psychological Astrology Students and Friends. And most of you are already there, but if you're not, come in and we can have topics discussed there. We can just ask each other questions, share our work. You can share what you do, and so can anyone. So we can expand a bit if you want. Yeah, and on my page as well. I mean, it's technically my page, but I'm open to anything if you wish to discuss that.
And what is your page?
Astrology, yeah. Sorry?
I said, and what is your page?
Let me show you while we, I'll just wait for another 5 minutes and we can start, but maybe I can show you here.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so that's the one.
Yeah.
And here I publish every week the announcements for the next, the next thing we're doing, the next discussion. And
can you share the group page too?
Sometimes I post quotes and articles, and you can do as well. And the other, so that's just called the 6 Seed Astrology, but then we've got a group. That one. I think you can find it if you look for it in the search. I have a little thing to share with you today. Very, very small page. Let me just go back to sharing. So I don't know how to approach it today, because I normally say a few words in the beginning and then we start discussing, but I also want to give the word today to Daria to offer a bit of a contrast to my approach, because I'm always so informational and logical and so on. And these two houses are exactly the contrast between the material, the logical, the mercurial mind, and the more spiritual and more abstract mind. And I have my nodes in these two houses, but my south node is in the 6th and my north node is in the 12th. So I obviously have a problem a little bit with the 12th house. Well, I don't want to think of it as a problem, but let's say a challenge. This is not my most comfortable zone. I don't have the confidence I understand the 12th house essence very well. I'm more comfortable with the 6th, and I'm trying to deduct the meaning of the 12th in terms of, you know, compare and contrast, and trying to imagine what it is like to be the opposite to what most of my energies are, you know, adjusting me to. But I thought Daria is great in the 12th house. She's an astrologer as well, and I asked her to help me a little bit today and to say a few words about the 12th house. You know, after this little introduction in the beginning, and maybe from another angle. I have no idea what she's going to say, but that's the point, you know, to be a bit more spontaneous and creative and not ordered all the time. So if any of you wants to say something before I start, or to ask, or to, you know, offer any insights in the beginning, go ahead, and then I'll jump in. Okay. This week, for the first time, we're talking about houses. We spent, I think, 10 weeks speaking about the signs of the zodiac, the archetypes, actually, because we had this combination of, say, the moon, 4th house, and Cancer. And we stopped at some point. I hope we can come back to this, because we've got a few more signs to cover. We haven't done Libra, Leo, and Virgo. And some of what we're discussing today will be overlapping a bit with Virgo, and we already did a discussion on Neptune in the beginning. This was our very first discussion. I don't know how we came to this, to start from Neptune, but maybe Paula remembers we were having another webinar, and then at the end of that we decided, let's start meeting every week like we're now, and studying astrology together, basically. And I usually a bit predominate the discussion because I try to share with you my perspective. Most of that is related to the works of Dane Rudier, Liz Green, Stephen Arroyo, Stephen Forrest, and many others. So we speak about books. I'm just saying a few things in the beginning for the new ones of you, those of you that are new today. And this time we decided to change gear a bit and look at an axis of two houses, the 6th house and the 12th house. As last week we discovered during the Chiron discussion that so many of us have some sort of accent on these houses in our charts. And it will be maybe a bit of a continuation of last week's discussion on Chiron. We didn't have enough time. This was the busiest and the most intense discussion so far, and I liked it really much. So many of you shared interesting insights and interesting charts. So let's see what we can discover in the houses today. So first of all, a little bit about the houses in general. I try to think of them and discover the meanings in the charts of the houses as the number one factor. For me, they're the number one factor. Yeah, you can probably notice the influence of Rudier here because he also seems to stress the houses. Not that he's disregarding the zodiac or the planets or anything like this. All of these things are equally important in the chart. But I think the houses are generally a bit disregarded. I discovered many people think that we necessarily have to have 12 houses because we have 12 signs, and also don't quite understand what happens in these houses, what's the meaning of them, what really is the essence of that. Very briefly, the zodiac is this ecliptic around the Earth, this background of electromagnetic field, different ways of receiving the solar energy, the sun energy, during the year, during the seasons. As we travel around the sun, we receive the energy of the sun during the year in different ways. And that's what's animating, that's what's giving the style of our personal energies in the chart, depending on in which signs of the zodiac we've got planets. And that's important, that's extremely important. But actually, this is not very personal, as that is the same thing for everyone living here on Earth. And old astrology, more ancient astrology, which was more to do with other things in society, like agriculture and taking care of everyday survival, it wasn't that personalized, it wasn't that psychologized in the past. This was the one concentrating on the zodiac. And the houses were not that important because the houses are introducing a very individual factor in the whole picture. There are different systems, different ways to calculate the houses. It's a big argument. I don't want to go into this one. You can discover for yourself if you're not familiar, and you can choose any sort of system. But it seems like the most famous ones, for example, the equal house system and a few others, are either choosing to concentrate on the zodiac or to concentrate on spatial factors. Spatial factors means you're born somewhere on the surface of the Earth in a particular place, and we imagine the space around us divided into equal sections or some sort of division of the space around us. And this is making things very personal. That's something that Rudier tries to understand, and I'm discussing all this at the moment also in answer to a question by Alti earlier. I posted an article on the group, and Alti asked me to discuss a little bit, what is this about? What is that article about? And in this article, Rudier is talking about this distinction between the way the charts look in Europe, but bear in mind he's talking about many years ago, I think 60s or 70s or something. This was something at the time, but I think it is something still today. How, if you open a website like Astrology, it's a French website, and you calculate your chart there, you see a completely different style, different way of, it's more the zodiac divided in sections. And there are points on that which are showing you where is the MC, where is the IC, the ascendant, but they're a bit lost in the wheel of the zodiac. While on astro.com, the big site, with many different styles. It gives you different styles of charts. There is also the option to have the American style chart. I don't know, you Americans, how you're more used to seeing your charts. I changed everything this week. After I went back to this article, which I knew from the past, but I've always been thinking that I was using the right format, that I was using that format, which is actually splitting the chart in 4 quadrants. And we have the horizon, the line of the horizon, which is dividing the chart into up and down, and the bottom part and the upper part. And then also the meridian, the other thick line in the chart, which is dividing it into east and west. And basically Roger is trying to say that let's examine this a bit and see how important the houses are and how important it is actually, if we're trying to work with this psychologically and personally, individually, to fix in the space, in the chart, for every one of us, where is the horizon and where is the meridian. And because, that's based on the place where we were born. And then we become, figuratively speaking, the center of our own universe by calculating the chart in this way. There are several systems that have this in the background as a presumption, as a way, as a kind of a philosophy behind the system of calculation, not just Campanus. Campanus is the one that I've chosen to use, but there are a few others. So the charts you're going to see today will look a little different. Sorry for the long introduction about that, but hopefully I can clarify why and where I'm coming from this with this a little later as we go along. Going back to the 6th house and the 12th house. I used this little wheel here for illustration to, as this has this red line in the middle and going around the bottom, clearly separating for us all the houses that are below the horizon, the first 6, and then the other 6 that are over the horizon. This is the most important initial distinction I think we need to make when we're studying them, how the ones underneath are so much more personal, individualistic, discussing a process. All of them are discussing a process of resembling growing up, going through different stages of being born and then getting through the different stages of growing up and maturing. The first 6 houses of the zodiac are concentrated on the self, on the development of the self. I don't want to use the word egoistic because there is nothing egoistic in this. It's very similar to the first stage of the lunar cycle. If Dwayne wants to later on correct me or give more specifics on that, I know you know very well the lunation cycle. Every cycle is pretty much based on that lunation cycle, where in the first part of it, the first half of it, we've got the moon growing, the moon getting bigger and bigger and bigger after the new moon. And it is a symbol of the process of growing up from a very naive initial unmature state, and slowly but surely traveling through the first 6 houses, we are discovering ourselves. We're trying our strength. We're learning things. We are interacting, and all sorts of processes are happening there. So the 6th house belongs to the under the horizon, and it's one of the transitional houses between the two. So when we get to the 6th house, something needs to change. Something needs to switch, so that we then begin traveling through the second part of the wheel, or the upper part. It's an emergence from underground kind of thing. That way of looking at the houses as the space around us, the 12 sections of the space around us. There is always, when we fixate the horizon, there is always this part underneath the horizon that's not visible. It's in the dark. It's what we don't see. And these 6 houses are this part. Then the ones between 7th and 12th are the sky that we are actually able to see from the point of birth, from the place when we were born. And we can observe all the planets eventually that happen to be in the upper section, but we can't really see the ones underneath. But the 6th house, the most important thing about it, around which all the other meanings, keywords, and more specific things that we know about this house revolve around the fact that it's a crisis, and it's a personal crisis. Personal because everything underneath the horizon is personal. And then when we get to the 12th house, we have something similar happening. Again, we need to switch direction. And again, we need to go from one hemisphere to the other. As the 12th house is not just an end, it's not just a death and the end of the process and the cycle, but it's also potentially starting something new, going back to the ascendant. So the 12th house has its own struggles, its own suffering and pain and difficulties, similar to the 6th, but there things are more focused on society, on our participation in society with other people, and we've got a much longer history behind our backs, including karmic history and just presumably a lifetime of experiences, as every house is ultimately about experience. We look at the houses to see what is happening in our life. Where is the action taking place? The actual action are the planets. They do different things. You know, these are the functions in us that do different things. And they do the things in a particular style, in a particular way, which is the signs of the zodiac. But where that whole drama happens is the houses. So it's just a very quick overview of the difference between signs, houses, and planets. So these circumstances that the houses are referring to really make things very personal in the chart. Imagine yourself being born in the same day with another person, but in different times. The ascendant is going to move. The order of the houses is going to be different, even though you are theoretically going to have, unless the moon switches signs in the meantime, which is the quickest planet, all the other planets will stay in the same signs. And this will be something in common with you and between you and that other person. But if we look at case studies, we will discover immediately how different circumstances these different people need to meet in their life and experiences, and where actually they would be pulled to try different things, or even without knowing a bit about astrology, they will have to get involved in that area of life where they have houses full of planets. If you don't have anything in a house, if you don't have anything in the 6th house or the 12th house, in our case, this doesn't mean that nothing's going to happen in your life in that house. That's another misconception. Many people ask me about this, but what about empty houses? I don't think houses are empty. None of them are empty. It's just we have concentrations on them if we have planets, and we have unescapable experiences if we have planets. But if we don't, the way I prefer to look at this is that things are rather normal, whatever we want to think that means. Our lifetime is not having its focal point of action and learning and dramas, crisis, so on, in the houses that are empty. We are going to eventually touch on them, we experience them. We all experience all the 12 houses, and they're so connected. I'm making such a big, lengthy introduction because I want to make it clear for you, and hopefully, if you don't think the same way, no problem, but I really can't separate any of the houses from the rest, from the whole wheel. So let's look at the whole wheel and remind ourselves as we go along that whatever is happening in the 6th house has a history in the houses 1 to 5. The experiences we had in houses 1 to 5 conditioned what is going to happen in the 6th house, how big the struggle is going to be, and what sort of change and repolarization we need to go through. What's the reason for that, and what's the need for that? And same with the 12th house. Everything that happened from the 7th to the 12th conditioned what we are dealing with in the 12th. And these two are preparations for entering the new zone, the new world. The 6th house is a personal crisis preparing us for relationships, for stepping into the zone of relationships. That's the 7th house and the descendant. And we presumably have something to overcome there, to correct, to work on the imperfections of how we approached our life or different things in the period before we had to do the transition. In the 6th house, there is always a sense of some sort of inadequacy, deficiency. That's why it's so critical not just because it's very mercurial. Mercury rules that house, and you know how Mercury is so analytical, splitting the information in all sorts of small bits and pieces and trying to look at them almost like under a microscope to discover what's wrong with the process or with the physical part of things, the material part of things. That's an earth house, and to correct it and to do it better, to either learn a new skill, a new technique, so that through this we can overcome the negative and move on. And also it teaches us humility in the face of not being perfect. You know how in the previous house, in the fifth, it's everything is so Leo style action, very exuberant, very overreaching, creative, yes, but maybe we crossed certain lines. We overdid things probably in the fifth house. There is a tendency there to extend yourself and think that you're all important maybe at some point. But the sixth house reminds us that we're not, that we have limitations and we have things that we need to bear in mind. Health-wise, that's one of the reasons we speak about health here, and this connection between spirit and body that we would then make with the 12th house. I'm I don't know how well I can actually speak about the sixth house, having so much of it in my own chart. I sometimes see that people that have a lot of something don't really understand it that well, and maybe others from a side can tell them and be better, more I don't know, objective observers of what's happening. But there is this preoccupation with whatever you have chosen to do in your life. If you have chosen it, if you haven't chosen any specific concentration, and people having a lot of sixth house tend to need that in their lives, to almost obsess with an area, become specialist in something, try to become specialist in something. And the most important thing is for that something to be useful for other people, to be having a value or a practical application so that others can benefit, and more on a one-to-one level, on a personal level. So a lot of teachers, healers, doctors, all sorts of mechanical professions, for example, that are producing something, and then this something, which is maybe a physical product, can be used by others. Many examples. Maybe you can give other examples, be more specific with this. But efficient action is a major keyword in the sixth house. We need to be producing something. And that something then has to change the world the way we have found it. Not a big change. It doesn't have to be like change the world in this, grand scale of things, but every little contribution is sufficient as long as it's been applied correctly to the situation, that we have well understood what is needed in that case for that person or for that thing, and have managed to contribute our skill, our knowledge, and our abilities to it. And also this big topic about endurance and suffering. Very often there is an accent on that, having to go through something that's not possible to completely overcome, something we need to put up with. It sounds very Chiron, very Saturn in a way, the topic of the sixth house. Ideally, we cultivate humility and understanding, and we try to find a way through the difficulty. One option only is that this difficulty is to do with health. We looked at, remember the chart from last time of Theodora. I think Theodora is again with us today, that had this huge sixth house in her chart and Chiron in the 12th opposing it. She was talking so much about her health issues, and this is kind of major concentration, but it's not always the case. I don't think in every case we can categorically say if you have a huge sixth house or things there, you're going to suffer physically in a way. It could be psychological suffering. It could be the lack of something which is a bit more subtle, but it tends to be always a problem there. I don't want to sound negative, but there is a problem. And I see it as a reason for there to be a problem, because then we get motivated to change, to work on ourselves, to better ourselves. It's a mutable house. Both of them are mutable houses. I think that's very important to understand what's going on in them. by this desire to improve, to change, to help, to assist. They're just doing it in two diametrically different, opposite ways. The sixth house is interested in the improvement of the material world, of making sure that what is inside us is a very good reflection of what's outside us. From here comes this desire in the sixth to order the environment, like a Virgo, to be, clean, hygienic, ordered, to put things that are out of order to make them working again. I think the tendency comes from there, from this sense that something is wrong in the first place and needs attention. And in the 12th house, again, we have a similar urge, but that's now more about the big picture. Society, people we don't know around us, groups of people also that maybe needing our help. All sorts of voluntary work is very relevant to this house. Sacrificing your personal time, your personal ego in a way, to work for a bigger cause and to be part of it in a way. But so many difficulties, psychological mostly difficulties, are to be overcome in the 12th house before we can really do that properly. As many people really self-undo, this is one of the main keywords I don't like very much in the 12th house, but yes, this can happen. We can be so burdened by the psychological weight of past memories, haunting memories, karmic things around our families that we can very often identify in the 12th house planets that are nothing to do with us personally, but they're so heavy and so difficult that some work needs to be done through them before we can work with them constructively. They may kill us, they may depress us, so much so that we reach a stage when this common problem of the 12th house, escapism, through anything you can think of, not just alcohol and drugs as people normally connect it to, but it could be anything. Escapism through reading books, for example. I've done this many times. Through watching TV, many hours a day without stopping. Compulsiveness in any sort of way, you name it. It's not just limited to substance abuse or anything like this. But I think what is underneath the reason why that happens often in the 12th house is that the experiences there are overwhelming. They're psychically overwhelming. They very often are psychic experiences, unconscious experiences that every person is not necessarily able to deal with and equipped to deal with. They can be scary, they can be confusing, and I leave it to you, those of you that have more of that, to maybe share things about this. How does it work in real life? As I'm not sure I connect with that myself very well, but theoretically, this is the stories I hear. And many other things. Let's stop it here. I've already talked too much. Give it on to you. I think now is a good moment if Daria wants to take over and maybe give us your thoughts, your perspective, especially on the 12th.
Sure. Thank you, darling. Hi, everyone. So my 12th house is pretty strong. I had my progressed moon going through the 12th house for a while, and I have a lot of transits going through Saturn right now. So 12th house and has been a big theme. So I'll share how I see it from my perspective. So a lot of the 12th house has to do with the soul and connecting with the idea of the spirit and the soul, that we're coming in with some sort of a mission to connect to higher power. So the way I see it, a lot of it is surrendering, right? And understanding that the perfect plan is within. The 6th house and the Virgo archetype likes to plan and everything to be perfect. And so the 12th house teaches us that the plan is in the higher power, trusting that everything is already, figured out, and everything is going according to plan, and that everything is perfect. So the idea of the 12th house is that there is no good or bad, and that everything is going in life according to plan. So letting go of control is one of the big things in the 12th house. So, and I feel like this is sort of the crisis that the person lives, having having both energies on the 6 and then the 12, that the idea of letting go and of really trusting that the universe will bring the perfect thing and the perfect way that everything will unfold. And this is where the 12th house energy, a lot of the teachings came out in the 12th house, for example, like the law of attraction. So the law of attraction is a very 12th house and Neptunian idea. Because it has to do with attracting what's already within you. So putting in the intention, connecting with what you want to attract, and attract that which is. So instead of having a direct figured out plan, which is more of a 6th house or a Virgo idea, it's more connecting with that the universe will bring the perfect opportunities, the perfect people, and that the universe in itself has a larger plan or has a larger idea how life is supposed to work and supposed to go. So of course, a lot of it as well is having faith. Faith is a big idea of the 12th house and Pisces in general. So people who have planets in the 12th house, I'm sure a lot of you guys do, if you do, is to do with having faith. So a strong 12th house, or to sort of ground the energy of the 12th house, the person has to believe in something bigger than themselves. So it could be a higher being and a higher power idea. So that's why a lot of the spiritual teachings come here, connecting with the spirit, connecting with the flow. I'll talk about the flow a little bit later. But so if the person doesn't necessarily identify spiritual, doesn't connect to the spirit, they at least can trust that there's a higher plan. So believe, having faith in the higher plan. And of course, the idea of the intuition and the intuitive arts. In the 12th house, the idea is to connect with the flow and to dissolve the boundaries, right? So the intuitive arts, you see a lot of musicians, a lot of dancers, yoga is part of it, meditation. So anything to do with sort of connecting with the flow and flow just going through you. You see a lot of writers and musicians and creative people identifying or describing the state of flow, where the time sort of stops and then they just become one with this energy that just flows through them as they're creating, as they're writing, as they're painting. It's almost like something is coming through them and they don't really have control over it. But the beauty of feeling this channel, this energy flow through them, brings a beautiful experience into the world, like a work of art, right? So compassion and giving and sharing, right? So that's one of the other things of Pisces, that because the boundaries are dissolved, there's this idea that we're all one. So the archetype of Virgo, the 12th house, is, like Radilina mentioned, is sort of the archetype of a professional, of a master, of somebody who's teaching their skills and has the skills to sort of, share. Whereas the 12th house believes that we're all one. So the shadow side of the 6th house, right, is that they could feel sometimes superior to people, or they'll feel like they have the skill, and it's all about like them having the skill, which is the 12th house dissolves this boundary and the feeling that we're all one and that we're all connected and nobody's higher or lower. And you feel the compassion and sort of the giving and the sharing that comes from that. So feeling the emotions of other people, empathic behavior, is a lot of the 12th house ideas as well. So feeling the emotions of others and being able to energetically influence other people. So, when people come with very strong emotions like anger or happiness in your life, or any other sort of energetic, if you watch something that's energetically high charge or low charge, you start to pick up that energy off of the person or whatever you're watching. So that has to do a lot with the 12th house as well. So dissolving boundaries and feeling the energy of the other person, and that cultivates compassion. So the compassion is sort of going through the state and knowing what the person is going through and putting yourself completely into the other person's shoes. And the shadow side of that could be that the person put themselves so much so in the other person's shoes that they don't know where their emotions start and what the other person's emotions start as well, right? So for that, a lot of people with the 12th house like to work alone and need a lot of space to sort of discharge, and a lot of space to find themselves and find their own connection and themselves, right? Their own emotions, like their own boundaries. So find them back. People who can't find the boundaries back and their boundaries are always open tend to lose themselves in other people's ideas and energies and what's going on with their world. In fact, people who have a lot of 12th houses need to work alone. They need to have their own space. That's a very important point for them. So you'd see a lot of, as I mentioned, creative types, or also working at a computer, or anything to do with just working by themselves and having their own space to meditate, to connect, to do breath work, whatever it is that works for them. Yeah, this is my chart.
Yes, I wanted to have it as an illustration while you speak.
Yes. No, please do, please do. So my progressed moon was in the 12th house for the longest time. And I actually had my spiritual awakening when the moon went into the 12th house, connecting with the spirit and understanding that there is a higher plan for me. And that really helped me to release the anxieties and sort of just let go, knowing that everything will work out for me. I feel like, before living under the 6th house archetype, having a plan and everything had to be the way it's supposed to be. And when it didn't work out, I felt like, like it's not going according to plan, and this idea that everything is just perfect, just the way it is, and seeing sort of the higher perspective, the higher vision of life, that everything is just aligned and everybody's just connected and we're connecting. So the idea of karma comes in as well in the 12th house. So this idea that, and a lot of people who have transiting planets or planets in the 12th house will see that things happen to them that sort of are unpredictable, and a lot to do with karma. So almost like everything is coming to them because it was already meant to be, or there's this karma they have to give back to another person or to themselves. And the losing control. So the control is like a very important piece of the 12th house and the 6th house. So having a plan and having control, which is a very 6th house idea. In the 12th house, the idea is to release the control and to let go. I feel like it's a very important piece. A lot of people who can't release and let go and trust in the higher power, that everything is connected, everything is meant to be perfect just the way it is. So for example, if you want to meet your soulmate, you'll meet them at the perfect time in the perfect place, and there's just and it's fine, and it's not a minute later. So people who have a hard time walking into their 12th house energy would experience the shadow sides of the 12th house, which is victimization and victimhood. So they often feel like they're victims of something happening to them, that they have no control over their lives, that things just happen, and a lot of it is victimhood and complaining, right? And there is this idea, I mean, it's true, the energy is that things are happening to them outside of their control. So the person has the opportunity, the choice to see whatever's happening to them outside of their control is either their blessing, that it's all happening for a good reason, and if the karma is really going bad, well, they're giving part of their karma back. Or they could see this in victimhood. And I see this a lot actually with people who have moon in the 12th house or moon in Pisces, that they sort of get stuck in this victim mentality if this is not properly addressed, that things are just happening to them and not owning the experiences that they have, right? Something else I wanted to mention. Yeah, the law of attraction is a very important piece of it. So the law of attraction came out, Abraham Hicks and so on. It came out about when Neptune went into Pisces, which is very interesting. So this idea that we create our own reality and we interact with our reality, and then if we switched, and then so the energies and the people and the experiences that come to us resonate with exactly the energy that we put out. And so to work with this energy in order to change the outside factors, the outside people that are coming, experiences that are coming to you, it's a matter of changing the emotions within, or moving through the emotions within. And this is where the karma comes in as well. So that if there is an experience that the soul needs to live on the outside, this situation is being attracted. And you probably live that. You probably live this, the same person keeps coming back, the same situation keeps coming back, right? And it's the soul trying to work through that experience. And when the soul finally works through the experience and you do a different gesture, or you react to it differently, or you take a different conclusion out of it, the situation moves on and this pattern stops happening, right? So this is a big piece of the 12th house as well. And yeah, so we're all one. and the dissolution of boundaries. And the 12th house is the final house. So it's almost like the end of a cycle, the end of the world, where everything from the 11th house, so all of these ideas, connecting with people, building communities, and building things together, come into the 12th house with everything that's been created in the 11th is sort of given back to source for it to help manifest the dream. Dreaming is very important in the 12th house, and actually over dreaming and sort of getting lost again. The dreaming is very important. The energy of the 12th house works in a way that we put the intention, we put the dream in, whether in a meditation or through a ritual or in a space, and allowing this dream like a seed. You keep watering the dream, watering the intention, and the seed keeps growing, slowly growing. The universe adds all these little pieces to it until the seed grows into this big garden of your dream being realized. And versus the sixth house. So dreaming is very important, but the shadow part of it is that people get lost in their dreams, get lost in this idea of what could be the ideal of what is, which is the seed itself, and not allowing it to grow. And this is where the sixth house comes in. So allowing the seed to grow, it is to do the action steps in order to help this evolve, to help the seed grow, right? You have to put the action in. And the 12th house is also associated with inaction. So sort of just the dreaming, just putting the intention, but without the other houses, without the other energies, it is very possible that the dreams of the 12th house will be never realized. Like you'll never write the book, you'll never do, the thing that you always plan to do, or that you'll never take the trip that you wanted to do, or the project, right? And this is where the sixth house energy comes in, where it's like, okay, we have the dream, we have the vision, we have the intention. Now let me use the skills, let me connect to other people, let me become a professional and focus and make a plan and put the action forward in order to make the seed grow. Yeah.
So well put, Daria. I can listen to you all day. So many good things you said. I was thinking while listening to you, this control idea you were saying so much, and it's so important. How I see how in the sixth house we need to learn to be in control of our surroundings, of our material world, of our relationships. And there is this, as you said, this unequalness. It's part of it. The sixth house needs to get into unequal relationships where it's either the superior or the inferior, as it's like an exercise for what comes. And what comes is the equal relationships in the seventh house. But that's why we have so many things going on in the sixth, like a teacher and a student, a follower of someone, and then that's the guru, for example. Or we have a younger person and an older person, the younger one, being some sort of an apprentice to the older. And also in work, in the workplace, that's very, very often touched on, how that's our ability. And we all have the sixth house and the 12th house, in the charts. So everyone, as far as the sixth house is concerned, needs to learn to function in this, for example, having a business, let's say, just for the sake of an example, running a small company. You still need to hire a few people there. You can't presumably do it all on your own. And these people, your subordinates, how well you balanced your relationship with them. Are you fair? Are you compassionate as well, 12th house? Are you just? Are you, in a way, functioning in that relationship? You cannot put them in the same position as you, as everyone needs to play the role that they're there for. But that's one of the arts in the sixth house, the way I see it, is to learn how to be a subordinate and at the same time one working for others in a good way, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually wanted to ask you, how do you see this archetype of the savior versus the servant, which is the archetype of the 12th house versus the 6th, right?
I really liked your comment, and you don't know how relevant it turns out to be, even though you don't know. I had a situation in the last couple of days contemplating about very extreme how can I say, expression of victimhood of a friend of mine who has the moon in Pisces in the 12th house. She's an old friend of mine, and I have been watching certain things. I don't want to go into the specifics, but it's this exactly that pattern that you were talking about, of how I think it's probably more likely for this to appear when we actually have something in the 12th house, rather than when we have it empty, and something is activating either the good or the positive or the negative to come out. So I've observed it in a number of times. I know many people with the moons in the 12th house. I don't know. Auti, I know you have it as well. Don't take me wrong. I'm not saying you're one of, those that actually I see you always as an example of how not to be that, how not to fall into that trap of, presuming that the world owes you, or what happened to you defines you. What really mostly doesn't allow the transition between the 12th house and the first house, this letting go that you were saying, which is the key of it, is that people become too defined and too sad or depressed or preoccupied with what happened to them. They think that their experiences, all of those experiences from the beginning of the cycle now to the end, define who they are, and they don't see that actually there is an essence there, a seed, the seed, that also you referred to. Eventually it's meant to be born in the first house again, the beginning of the new cycle. So we have to let go of everything that's not important in the 12th, of that's no longer relevant, no longer needed, and to only leave the little essence that we need to carry forward to the next, let's say, incarnation, if we decide to believe in that, or the next cycle. And only that can survive. But this selection of what to leave aside and what to keep is very hard, isn't it? As we become so attached to all those things and people.
Absolutely. I mean, don't forget, and we often forget, people with planets in the 12th house and Pisces and so on, that it's a mutable sign, right? And the mutable sign has to keep on moving, and actually what the victimhood, when it breeds victimhood, people start looking for saviors, right? So this idea of like, somebody can save me, like everything is outside of my control and somebody can come and save my situation, whether it's financial or emotional. And it sort of breeds that like victim savior complex, right? That's very hard to come out of.
That's such a typical complex for this energy. And maybe the two houses are playing out here. Let's imagine you have nothing in the 6th, but something in the 12th is activated in this way because they function as an axis. Maybe some sort of complex on a personal level, 6th house, feeling inadequate in yourself as an individual person, your own capabilities, your own, this being in control is about responsibility, taking responsibility for your actions, for your choices, and having this constant, probably one of the best things about the 6th house attunement is that, you don't have to be told that it's up to you. You may do a good job with it, you may fail, but you very often don't presume that somebody else needs to create the good circumstances for you, or the system, or the group of people that you belong to, your family or whatever. And then the complex in the 12th house that you said, if that's activated, maybe that has its roots from the 6th. So if things didn't go well in the 6th, and you didn't build this stable foundation of self-respect, relying on your own skill, relying on your own abilities, to then exchange equally with other people, ideally, and participate in more and more and more involvement in the big picture, in the second part of the wheel. Then when you get to the 12th, you feel like you have been deprived of something. I see personally all those cases. I don't know, maybe this is a bit controversial, I don't mind, but all those cases of people feeling like they belong to a group of people, gender-wise, race-wise, whatever category you can think of, nationality, where they didn't live out their life the way they imagined, or didn't have what they wanted, predominantly because of these circumstances. And they not only start, this victim, as I said, victim savior mentality. They not only look for saviors. I'm more than happy to let them go and look for saviors if that's what they want and that's what's going to make them feel good. But there is another tendency looking for scapegoats. and looking for people to blame, or not just people, but groups of people. You don't go to a particular person and say, you did this wrong, you didn't, you weren't fair to me or personally, but you start blaming groups of inanimate people that, how in a group, you cannot separate and say the whole group is positive or the whole group is negative. It's a bit like with statistics, isn't it? Statistics in astrology. If we want to be too scientific in astrology, we may have a stronger argument with someone that doesn't believe in astrology in the first place and is not interested. But what is that helping us with? Because statistics are a reflection of an average, of a total, an average. It's not individual cases. It's not individual psychological issues that we are actually dealing with. And only in the individual issues we can see what's the balance in the energies.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the sort of, yeah, I mean, it touches a bit on the Sagittarius, I find, like that that idea of just like grouping everything in, but absolutely, absolutely. Like the Pisces, the victim has to have the perpetrator, right? It has to have somebody to blame. And I actually forgot to mention that on a consciousness level, so the 12th house represents our collective consciousness. And a lot of the situations that happen to people in the 12th house as well is, well, being in monasteries, so it's confinement, right? It could be confinement, personal confinement, like by choice. So it could be monasteries or seclusion, or it could be, being in prisons, being imprisoned, or being sort of held, I mean, even mental institutions, so being held confined against your will, like that's an important part. And as well, to touch on the victim savior, I've seen a lot of people who have either strong 12th house or transiting planets that, and it's interesting, I wanted to ask you, it probably has to do with the 6, is that they have either a relative or a child that they need to take care of. So almost like having a sick child or a sick parent or an invalid in their life that they have to take care of. So it's almost like a situation where they always have to take responsibility and care for someone.
Well, that's very interesting what you're saying. It's just reminded me, for example, some of you know I've got this huge 6th house. I had something like this, if it may be interesting for you. It was a grandmother that was confined to bed, even though otherwise she was very spiritual, in her spirit, very well adjusted to the situation. But she was paralyzed for 17 years, and we were caring for her throughout my childhood, pretty much. Until I was like already, in my after university years. So that was a big part of my life. This is an experience, like an example of experience in the 6th house, I believe. And this may be an alternative to your own health being affected. Very often people think your own health is the one that will suffer. I don't know, maybe later in life that would be something to me as well. But usually you see patterns with these things, as there are very often people with strong 6th house which are weak physically from very early on, from the beginning. We see fragility, we see some sort of repeating pattern of illness or something like this going on. So you said so many different things I wanted to comment on, and
comment on everything for sure.
I guess they don't need any more comments. I mean, you were clear enough. So if anyone else wants to interject, tell us about your experiences in the 6th house, 12th house. I think we've got plenty of examples. Shall I switch to another chart? We're looking at charts anyway. We can let me see who had a lot of that going on.
I mean, to be honest with you, for example, the take on what I see with your grandma is probably developing the servant archetype. Like I feel like the 6th house and the Virgo, right, is the servant archetype. So learning how to serve an idea, right? Like, well, serving unconditionally has coming from the 12th house, like coming from your 12th house south node, right? But sort of serving day to day, serving somebody, like repeatedly or mundanely, or having a routine serving,
It's probably the two of them about serving, in these two different ways, practical and psychological, but both of them are around serving, and it has to be unconditional, I think, in both houses, in the 6th and in the 12th. But what's interesting, you touched on this a bit, but how in the 12th we lose the ego. There is this you spoke about going back to source, merging with that maybe still there memory of what it was like, what was the feeling like when we were still not separated from the mother in the womb, or maybe even further back in time, and later in early childhood. So this sort of feeling of complete safety and merging and being one with everything around us, physically feeling, and the suffering of others and the world without this being part of our own bodies is something very 12th house. And we want to go back there if we have a lot of planets there, especially if the sun is there. And we are split in this two opposing desires: the desire to define yourself as a separate person, as an ego, as having your own goals, having your own separate application of what you are and who you are, and at the same time not really wanting to do that. And there very often is this confusion. I know some of you have Sun in the 12th, along with many other planets there. Please tell us if this is right. But I have noticed that this thing is very often slowing down otherwise very talented, very capable, very practically capable people that want to produce things, real things here and now in the 6th house sense of the word, because of that inner doubt. But why shall I bother? Maybe if we are one, and if everything is one, and if this world is not really that important, and I have noticed how people with a lot of 12th house are almost from another world, from a higher dimension, and they kind of remember not only the past but also the future, and they are not that interested and motivated to serve in the physical world of the day of their incarnation, have a difficulty to incarnate. I've heard the comment many times, I kind of didn't want to get born, not because I have anything against life, but it's just not seeing the point, because I was like wanting to participate in something higher, in something more spiritual. I think this is often slowing them down in the physical expression, only to discover later in life. And this is the latest house, the last house. So many late bloomers in this last house of people discovering their major strengths and their major talents after 40, after 50, I don't know, later in life, and becoming really who they are much later. If you've noticed this pattern in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have, yeah, absolutely. That sort of people with the 12th house. But I think discovering what they're meant to do, depending if they have the 6th house. If they have the 6th and the 12th, it usually balances out really well. So they serve, right? Like it's the idea of service for humanity, taking the 12th house, compassion and connection with all, and bringing into the world and serving. But just the 12th house, yeah, it's usually, well, I find that people have a hard time planning or putting their plans into reality. There's sort of a disconnection with the world. Absolutely. Yeah.
That floating sense that you were talking about, which for creativity, for imagination can be so great, and for also discharging, as you said, the heavy emotions, but it's not suited for embodying in form, in physical form. As at the end of the day, this is water, and it's the broadest water, the sea, in the 12th house, while the 6th house is earthly, it's practical, it's concrete, and that's the point of it. They all have a role to play, they have a task to perform based on the position in the cycle, where they are, which step in the cycle they are. And I that's how I always try to look at it, and not forget, because otherwise if I don't, it's very easy to fall into this positive negative, and it's just keywords which are either positive or negative, but we don't get the picture. Maybe if as you said, we've got both of these houses in the chart, and we managed to teach ourselves the lessons of the 6th, maybe when we're younger, because so many things in the 6th are so basic, hygiene habits, or how to take care of your immediate environment, including your home, how to maintain order or whatever. And these are early habits, isn't it? It's something that a child needs to learn in the beginning, so that this becomes like a basis, and from a certain point onward, if you did it right, you don't even think about it, you just do it automatically. But if you skip that step and you kind of got didn't get through that, it becomes a big burden later in life. And if you're very watery, if you're very fiery, and if you're not very practical, don't have a lot of earth, let's say in the chart, this may be a big problem of how to integrate that and how to have the habits of everyday living, so they don't then how can I say, they don't prevent you from doing your other work in other houses of the chart. That is important. So yeah, maybe worth saying that if we have a lot of in these houses and we're very good in that, we are meant to teach others how to do these things, be an example, and at the same time leave them alone to do their houses in their own way, and learn from that, because it's the concentration of one's experience. That's why the sixth house is so often connected with the choice of work. I have a separate talk I did recently on the work issue, how to choose your profession, and I was touching on the 2nd, 6th, and the 10th, but the 6th is one of the main ones here, because it's so important to choose how you manage your everyday tasks and what actually happens within the contents of your days. That's a big topic in the 6th. That's why we often end up working something, doing a work which is not a burden, which is not just an on the side profession and what money making thing, but it's our life. Our life needs to become our work if we have a lot of sixth house. Otherwise, it's just extremely difficult to exist and to bear the burden of having to do something you're not interested in. It's a very big problem in the sixth house. Yeah, usually it's not that much about how good you are in this or how passionate you are in this. In order to be passionate, I think the signs need to come in play. What are the signs that are in the sixth house? Yeah, that's the energy expression. But this idea of just doing something that you enjoy and is meaningful, very, very important, meaningful work in the sixth house, is like pulling you there and wanting that from you. If you have things, especially personal plans in the sixth. But in the 12th, the isolation that you spoke about in the 12th is this. Sometimes I have noticed people have told me the burden of that psychic pressure is so great that if I don't meditate, if I don't if I'm not alone regularly, I cannot exist under the pressure of all this, and I need to discharge it this way. It's a need. It's a very, very what else?
Absolutely. I would love to hear from other participants who have the 12th and the 6th, how are they experiencing their 12th, their 6th?
Yes, please, guys, share with us. Come on, Xavier. Don't be shy. You are the
All
one.
right, then.
You are the one.
Yeah, I can contribute something. Is there any chance you can put my chart up?
I was just looking for it.
Thank you very much. And while you're doing that, one of the ways in which I explain the 12th 6 axis to people is that the houses go around anti-clockwise and the planets go around clockwise. And I always like to think as the 12th that if you've got planets in the 12th, they've just been put into the sunlight and they're a little bit disorientated. They're like, well, what's going on here? And that's what they've got to resolve. And I always like to think that the 6th is like the end of the day when you're ordering everything and you're packing everything up to go home and everything's needs to be in a nice order. You don't want to just run off and leave things higgledy-piggledy, if you like. But that's just the way I explain it. But if you were to look at my chart, I have a really profound thing to share with you all, and I want to bring your attention to the Jupiter-Uranus axis that I have. Jupiter in the 12th in early Taurus at 3 degrees Taurus, and Uranus at 5 degrees Scorpio in the 6th. And I've found that in my life, this is mostly about transits, that when Jupiter transits Uranus in my 6th house, things go somewhat bizarre with what I'm doing with myself. So, for example, I would have been 6 years old when I first experienced that transit, and although I wasn't actually doing much at 6 years old, there was a little bit of upset at home. Going fast forward to when I was 18, the next time I experienced that transit, I dropped out of school. 12 years later, when I was 30, I got fired from my job. And then 12 years after that, just 2 years ago there, I was fired from another job. So I always experienced Jupiter passing over my natal Uranus as completely upsetting everything that I'm doing with myself at the time, for better or for worse. But it does mean that once I hit 54, I'm just going to not leave the house. I'm just going to put my head under the covers, retreat into my 12th, where I'm very, very comfortable. It has to be said. So that's just something wanted to share with you.
Well, I was just wondering whether the second time around, you had the Jupiter opposition in conjunction with your Uranus. Was it also Saturn over your Uranus in the sixth, or at least somewhere in the sixth? It was for sure at that early age. To me, this Uranus in the sixth house is like, expect the unexpected in the area of work and the area of your relationship with work institutions or people you work with or you work for or whatever, something like this. So, and it's obviously your mission to go through these things, and that's why they're so active, as your North Node is conjunct Uranus there.
Indeed, yeah, it's something I have to deal with, I think. I do have a few thoughts about the 12th as well. I'm a big fan of the 12th house because of the challenges that it presents to us. I like to think that, there is that idea of like a higher realm, if you like, or a sort of enhanced consciousness. But I use my 12th house, all those planets in the 12th, as a kind of a strength, really. I'm very comfortable being alone. When I was a teenager, I always used to say that my biggest fear was to be alone, but that turned out to be absolute nonsense, because I'm very comfortable. I do my best work when I'm shuttered away and I'm alone. I would agree with that assertion that sometimes you can get a little bit lost in your head. There isn't as much doing like a sixth house thing as there is to feeling as a 12th house thing. So I totally agree with that. And again, it goes back to that, in my case, my North Node being in the sixth, I've got to learn how to do things with a little more organization. It's something that I am learning, it has to be said, eventually.
You obviously have the vision, or at least you have the potential to have the vision, with so many planets in the 12th house and some sort of previous experience in it, South Node in the 12th house. And it's just a question, maybe, I don't know, of deciding this argument between, shall I give up in kind of a self-undoing way, or shall I actually focus on something and be interested and dedicate? As the moment these energies in that chart, and especially with the Moon in Leo and Venus in Aries and many things I notice here, that can be, as long as you decide to fixate on something, then things are going to very quickly develop, move on, and
yeah, I agree. I like to think of the sixth house as I don't know, action orientated. I mean, you're doing things with the six. It's something that you're actually producing, if you like. How you routine, what you do for work, if you like, how you organize yourself. But in Hellenistic astrology, the planet Mars receives its joy in the sixth house. So Mars is quite happy to actually get things done, if you like, which I find quite interesting. So. I mean, you yourself, I've yet to see your chart, Radalina, so maybe you'd like to throw that up at some point. But
I wanted to ask a question, if I could. Is that okay?
Of yeah, of course.
You had talked about that when Jupiter goes over the Uranus, you've had experiences, and I noticed at this point Uranus has gone over, maybe, or is going to go over your Jupiter. Which
yes,
is
I've experienced my Uranus opposition, which I like to think of as one of those midlife crisis points in your chart, if you like. The last, and also Uranus has been retrograding over my Jupiter, so I've experienced that exact transit 3 times in the space of about 3 years. My life has changed completely in the last 2 years, absolutely, and I've been more less interested in being employed by an employer and more doing my own thing. So I think that's how that's manifested.
That's what I'm curious about. Yes.
Yeah.
were there any major changes related to your home situation? Because your moon exactly on the IC is squaring Uranus at the moment, and it's part of this Uranus opposition dynamic going on.
The only thing I can think of is I'm spending a lot more time at home, but then again, I think everybody is. So, but
Yes.
that's possibly what's happening there. Yeah.
The IC is a lot more than the home, isn't it? It's the personal
Yeah,
world
yeah.
also, your inner personal world. So it may have to do with introspection a lot, not just with
Yeah, how you're rooted. Yeah.
yeah.
I'm looking. Where is that IC on your chart that you're
It's
talking
here.
about?
There you go.
This is the new style I'm using. So that's a hybrid. It's neither the chart that I wanted to show you something. Well, and we'll come back to it. So here is this article that we were discussing with Auti. I won't go through the article. It's just these two charts here. I don't know if you see, they're very blurry. But in this article where Roger discusses, you know, the European style chart and the American style chart, and this is the kind which is having the zodiac wheel around the chart. So at the moment you look at it, you concentrate on the zodiac and all the things, you know, the planets inside and everything, and the 4 points, just concentration points in the zodiac wheel. Well, this is the American style chart, which is focusing on the line of the horizon and the line of the meridian, they're always like thicker, like here with the chart. You see, so you see how we have this line which is thicker, and then this line, and it doesn't really say ICMC, but what I love about this one, it's still showing us, you know, in which zodiac sign planets are, but what I like is that in this format we can see the cusps of the houses. So what degree is the cusp of each house? So in the other one I was using before, there wasn't that, and I needed, but I think this is a very important thing, because say you don't have anything in the 5th house, yeah, but we can immediately see what is the degree of the zodiac sign there on the cusp of the 5th house, and that sets the tone for the experiences in the 5th house. We can check the Sabian symbols as well, and have an even greater idea about that through the symbol, and then you have a picture of your individual case, individual experience, more than the other. But then Astro.com allows me to combine and put the zodiac as well over the American style, because I actually don't want to disregard that. Yeah, let's not concentrate on it, but I need it there as well, because with the zodiac we can very quickly see where things are, you know, where we have intersected signs or intersected houses, which is another thing we don't see in the, if we don't have it, if we don't have the zodiac around it. So I decided from now on, for my own work, to use this format, which is, I think, is giving me the best of both worlds in a way, and it's helping to see. But yeah, these two lines are thicker, so we can see clearly where is the meridian, and that this moon is exactly on the IC in the 4th, on the side of the 4th. Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to ask you something, and this the 12th house, this full 12th house, could be, you know, also I always connect it with, you have something to contribute to the future. I don't know if you have a feeling about that. And
well, that's a lot of pressure. Thanks for that.
Pressure, yeah. Are you going to...
That's quite exciting, really, when you put it like that. Again, you know, the 12th house for me is kind of special, because I've got so much going on there. A lot of depth going on there as well. But I suppose that North Node is figuring out what it is I've got to contribute to the future.
Yes,
I guess.
and also trying to get to emerge from that realm of the 12th house, because you obviously come from there. Your situation is very mirror image to mine. I've got so many plants in the 6th with the South Node there. You've got so many plants in the 12th with the South Node there. And the way I understand it is that you have from before, there is history in this skill, your 12th house skill. You're not definitely not starting from scratch in the 12th house, in a way. But you need to maybe put the end word to it, and now switch to something else or to polarize. Both of these houses are about changing, polarizing.
Yeah, yeah.
Beyond, yeah. But this is so literal in that case, isn't it?
Aye, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think so. Again, like I say about getting stuff done, doing things. I can't remember where it is, but somebody's got those little phrases to do that with the houses, and the 6th house is I do, and I think the 12th house is I surrender. I do think that I need to do more things, perhaps.
Don't you guys think that in the 6th house we surrender the ego of Leo, of the 5th house?
Mm-hmm.
That's what we surrender there, and that's where we become, students, apprentices, people that start learning a new skill that they were never good in before. Something they're not comfortable in. Also, that's what you surrender there. What you surrender in the 12th is your everything that we had certain results from our interaction with the world, especially work, in the 10th and in the 11th houses. We either were successful or not. There was either success or failure. Here it's about how we deal with our social success or failure. In the 6th, it's how we deal with our personal success or failure. And they're pretty much the same thing, but it's just in which realm of existence we were dealing with. Is it the personal world or is it the social world? I know, that's how I try to.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? I'd like to ask a question, if it's okay, because you've got that sun Chiron up there. We were talking about Chiron last time. I don't know if anybody could just comment a little more about how that sun Chiron might manifest, or how that might have something to do with your mission or not, or does that just help you to be more sensitive, or if that's appropriate to ask. I'm just curious.
I don't think it's inappropriate. So my sun's at 19 degrees Aries and Chiron's at 27. So you got a difference of 8 degrees there. The Chiron's sitting on top of the Mercury. That's more of an exact thing. But what I'm doing at the moment is I'm a tarot reader. So that idea of helping people figure things out and come to terms with things, it's certainly manifesting in a big way at the moment. I've never really thought about the Sun and Chiron combust, if you like. I've always thought about that slight separation. Obviously, they're in the same sign in the same house, so there's going to be an influence. Maybe you're going to have a better idea than I am at the moment.
I know somebody close to me who's got a Sun Chiron. I've recently met him, but he's a very dear person to me. And so I was just wondering to try to maybe give me a little more insight on that, because
maybe I can recommend something for that, Laura, if you want to. I may have mentioned this before, but do you guys know this psychological astrology magazine that was coming out in the early 2000s, Apollon? It only had 6 issues, and Liz Green was, very involved in it, and other astrologers. It's free online. I can send you the link. You can download the 6 issues. They're brilliant. And in one of them, there is a big special article by Liz Green on the connection between Chiron and the Sun, and how the different aspects, especially the hard aspects, if you have your Sun somehow involved with Chiron in the chart, how this can either cancel out the solar urge for, living and for wanting to achieve and wanting to go forward, or it can invigorate it. So she goes really in depth, and it's very interesting. If you want to take a look at that, yeah. I don't remember which issue, but I will, remind me if I forget. I will send a link in the group afterwards.
Great, thank you.
And I think you definitely have the conjunction there with Chiron, but yes, it's not very close. That's not predominant. Hopefully your Mercury is pulling Chiron a bit away from the Sun and giving it some more clarity and some more perspective. I don't think that your Mercury Chiron is a bad thing. It may be difficult, I don't know. It's more having an idea that you have a communication problem, as we discussed last time. Than you really do, and I guess this is helping. I've noticed that when the Sun is very close to Mercury, like this exact conjunction, the cazimi or the combust, it's that's when we have a very subjective mind. Someone that's having a very hard time looking outside of their preconceived ideas, feelings about, and they completely identify with their thoughts and with their beliefs and thinking. So yeah, very good that you don't have that. I think you're very lucky. That Mercury is a little away from the sun. Anyway.
Because the Mercury and Chiron are conjunct like that, I would think that would be excellent for helping other people, because you can verbalize the parts to your clients, your tarot, people who come to you for tarot, the things about them that are wounded that they want help with, and you have the verbal skills to help them specifically like that. You have an understanding.
Yeah, I think it makes me a surprisingly good listener as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how I would put that. Chiron really with it, right on top of each other, 27 both.
Yes. Yes. And also the Pluto is interesting. I don't want to over concentrate on the chart, but Pluto is in the 6th house. And if you remember what we discussed about Pluto in the Pluto talk, when I re-listened to it the other day because I wanted to make some excerpts from it, and I was thinking, am I talking about Pluto here or the 12th house? Because there were so many common topics, I think, between what Pluto stands for as this big societal mission, how we can contribute to the world in the best possible way, to the sign of Pluto in the chart. I know it's a bit, maybe not exactly what we used to think about, but if you think about it, maybe we can see that this big contribution, giving out yourself, being helpful in a longer run somehow, there is something in common between Pluto and the 12th house. So maybe your Pluto in the same house as the North Node could be another helper for living through that mission and applying. It's almost like a channel. All those psychic energies you have access to easily from the 12th house. And what is the tarot? To me, the tarot is this subconscious, magical way. I don't know how. Nobody has a reasonable explanation of how we always manage to pull out from the cards exactly what is already in our subconscious, what we already know, what we already feel, but we don't have clarity about it. It's like you're helping people reach their 12 houses. That's how I see it. Through the tarot reading.
I never thought of it like that. I quite like that. Anybody want help getting to their 12th?
I do. I need that.
I do. I have that 12th. The sixth house has the south node, and the 12th house for me has the north node. So it's what I'm evolving towards in this lifetime.
Yeah, we have a lot to learn from you. So if you're open, I would like to consult with you and do a tarot reading.
Okay.
Daya and I have been exploring tarot quite a lot recently, and every day we draw a card and we send it to each other and we explore it from all sorts of different, not just mythology, but also Jungian tarot and many, many places.
So what card did you draw today?
It wasn't the most, let's say, positive one. It was Two of Swords, my cards, and that's the logical connection. I don't know to what extent you agree. Some of them are a bit off, but they say it's
Moon in Libra.
Moon in Libra. Is it true?
Yeah.
What would you say about that?
So the Two of Swords is about peace and equilibrium. I don't know what deck you use, but in the Waite Smith, it's the blindfolded lady with the two equal swords. I always like to think of it as the high priestess in her nightie. She's she's exploring the realms that she can't actually see. But Two of Swords is a nice, peaceful. It's one of the nicer swords cards. So I don't know if you're feeling kind of.
Yeah, this blindfolded lady, isn't she also associated with mental confusion, not wanting to decide between two different things, Well,
that's one way of looking at it, but it's also, you could also think of it as trusting your instincts. You've got all the information that you need, but you still haven't quite got an idea of where you need to go. So you need to just sort of take a deep breath, trust your instincts and go with what your gut tells you, if you like. I'm trying to find the Two of Swords here. Are you at the bottom?
You are, what you're saying is making me think this may be an advice to me to balance the 6th house and the 12th house. Yes, in a way that, you know, don't be too much 6th house. This card is an air card. Yeah, it's belonging to the air element. So presumably that lady is too mental and doesn't listen to the intuition, as you said, and too mercurial, 6th house, maybe, and not enough.
Yeah. I'd like to think that this particular woman would be more comfortable in the 12th than she would the 6th. Yes.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and that's a lesson to be learned, I guess, today. And interestingly, Daya, I think Daya, are you still with us? I don't see you on my screen, but maybe she disappeared. She got the moon today, a major economy.
Okay.
And I had asked her a couple of days ago to do this, you know, speaking about the topic to the 12th house, and she was saying, oh, how relevant the moon, the three-faced goddess, is. If you're interested, I don't want to sound like promoting my work here, but I did recently a talk on the tarot, and I have the recording if you're interested. It's my take. It's quite unusual because I don't follow any system. And I decided to use my own, let's say, intuition and logic to connect certain astrological symbols to the major arcana. And some of them are very unusual, like asteroids and the moons of Mars I talk about in one of the cards. So, I mean, if you're interested.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, sounds like fun.
And maybe you can teach me. This is a complete experiment for me. It was a complete experiment. So this sort of research about it, trying to, you know, contribute something different, not like everything you can read everywhere. And so, we'll be very interested to speak to you.
Sure. Some other time. Yeah, we'll do that.
Okay. You asked me. I used the mythic tarot by Liz Green and Juliet Sherman.
Okay. The new one or the old one?
The new one, I think, but not only. It's just one of them.
Right. Okay. Good. Yes. Good. I have both. They're brilliant. They're lovely, and the books that come with them are brilliant.
Right. Yeah.
Yes, and I really like the way she describes it. She goes into astrology, so every card has like sort of an astrological equivalent where you can really relate. If you know astrological archetypes, it's just so much easier for me, for example, to draw my cards.
Could you show me I'm also totally into tarot, and I have been for all my life, but could you show me the cover of that one?
Yes.
Do you have that you're talking about?
So that's my page. If you go
No, I meant the cover of the tarot deck you two are.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I misunderstood you. 1 second. Yes.
Okay. Oh, beautiful cover. The Mythic. The Mythic. Oh, I've never seen that. Thank you.
You can get it on Amazon or eBay. I don't know. We were both with Daya. We were amazed how quickly they deliver it here in Spain. We ordered it in completely different times. I ordered it. It came over Christmas for like 1 day or something, which was very, very strange. But yeah, no, because we ordered it from the UK, and very easy to get here.
Yeah.
It's a book with today.
Nice.
Love it.
So Lauren, I'll just do this for you very, very quickly. I've got the Mythic Tarot. Now there are two versions of the Mythic Tarot. The first one was by Liz Green and Juliet Sharman Burke, and it came out in 2000, I think, and then it was redone about 3 or 4 years ago. Exactly the same, just slightly crisper artwork, if you like. But Lauren, here you go. I've pulled for you the Queen of Wands.
Oh wow!
The Queen of Wands.
That's so accurate.
This lady, incredibly passionate, and she knows her stuff. You know, she always speaks her mind. So I don't know. Do you feel a bit Queen of Wandy at the moment?
Yes, that would be me.
Do you like cats?
Look at her chart.
I do love cats.
Good. There you go.
Isn't that the
That
Queen
was
of
fun.
Wands? Aries with Leo. Aries Sun, Leo Moon.
I think the Queen of Wands is a very Aries card.
I'm Aries with a Leo moon, like you.
Like me? Oh, well, there you go. You're very Queen of Wands then. Queen of Wands is my favourite queen. She's awesome. You just don't get on the wrong side of her. You know, she will eat you.
Oh dear.
Why do you say air and not fire? Because Daya told me somebody thought there were different distribution of elements in the cards, not like usual. Are you into one of these things?
Wands is fire for me. Wands is fire.
Okay.
But you're absolutely right. There are some French systems, if you like, that have swords as fire and wands as air, but that makes no sense to me, to be honest.
Me too. I can get that, but that's another story. But yes, okay. By the way, I used the three queens some time ago. I was very new to the tarot at the time to do a talk on Venus, and at the end of the talk, we talked about the four different types of women that these could kind of embody, and we were all women at the talk, so everybody was like identifying with one of the four queens in a way. So,
And what were you? Were
I'm
you a
Queen
Pentacles?
of Swords. I think
Okay.
if you read the mythic tarot stories, you know what they are, what they do, and what's the myth behind them. The story behind this Atalanta, as she's called in mythology, the Queen of Swords, has a lot in common with my own, I don't know, profile, I think. And yes, you asked me about my chart. I deliberately don't share it now because I already did before you joined us. I don't want to. I want to look at other people's charts.
Yeah, okay.
If you were curious to see my chart, the Saturn talk. If you go to the Saturn talk, we spend more than half an hour or more on my chart. I had promised at the time to give people to discuss it and so on. So, yeah, it's there.
I know what I'll be doing tonight then, thanks.
Yeah, but this is only in the secret recordings. Yeah, we have the secret recordings that are just for us, for members of, you know, who signed up. And I haven't published it on the main one on the site. So,
Okay.
but you can still get it. You can still get it.
Yeah.
You want. All right. So that's Lauren's chart. Yeah, Dwayne.
Xavier, would you please hold up the card for the Two of Swords?
The one that you saw previously.
Yes. Now, I draw people's attention to the vase to Radlina's right.
To what? To my right? Oh, yeah.
Well, oh, yeah.
Very well spotted. That's very well spotted.
All you need is a blindfold.
Yeah, I can try to show you closer. That's cotton. Okay, so we touched a little bit on your chart, Lauren, last week. Do you want to share with us something 6th house, 12th house related, or would you?
The only question I would say is that the opposition of the moon and the north node there, and what that might mean.
More significantly, the conjunction of the south node with the moon, to me, always speaks about having yourself having been lunar before, having been in a lunar role, and usually these circumstances come back in terms of having to take care for others in a way this time around, but not in the most satisfactory way. Maybe Pluto being there as well. Maybe it was some sort of extreme caretaking under extreme circumstances. I don't know.
I don't I mean, except being a mom, but I didn't experience having to take care of anyone in that way. I just thought it made me more emotional, and I have to watch it. You know, because it can be the tendency towards being too expressive or too emotional, and having to refine in this lifetime. Also, for me, I made up a little story that I was a people pleaser more, and so concerned with other people, and giving myself the permission to be more of really who I am, which also I I'm pretty okay with being by myself. I'm happy by myself. And of course, I'm with my music. So that never feels alone.
This makes me wonder, how accurate is your birth time?
I think it's very accurate for, well, let me make sure. Yeah, 4:26 a.m. It's on the chart, and by that time, probably the doctors were coherent by 4 in the morning. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, the reason I asked is because if the moon with the south node are a little bit closer to the descendant even than now, just a little, it's a question of a few minutes, I guess, 10 minutes or something, then this may make more sense in terms of the people pleasing and the adjustment to others. But it's always the sixth house as well, isn't it? The trying to sacrifice your own.
I mean, I do have in my whole mentality, I want to be of service to everyone. I want to be, for not to everyone, but for anyone who I could serve, that what my point of view or my skills, I would love for that to help other people. I still feel that way.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, that's what I would say about my question has been with the moon opposite is maybe my mother hated for me to be by myself.
Well, is it to do with maybe obsessive mother or too caring mother? Because sometimes too much care can be as much of a problem as not enough care. Or I don't know. You tell us how this manifests. How do you see it mostly?
Well, moon in Leo, I think, for expression in music. That's what I think. And that I needed to have the moon in Leo in order to fully be able to express. I sing in a very, I like really go deep in my soul and then express it out so that people are touched by it. And so that's how I see it. And that I came through from a past life being able to do that before as well. Because I've always, since 4 years old, I was performing music.
It's extremely important if you want to explore. Maybe you have already this conjunction of Mars and Venus that squares the moon and the nodes. So
okay.
And it's in Taurus in the second house, and I associate Taurus very much with the voice as well. Yeah, but this is powerful. Mars-Venus conjunction, I've noticed, is always powerful. It's always in terms of expression. It has something to do with Leo Moon expression in my mind. A lot of energized, expenditure of energy. You need the expenditure of energy. That's what I'm trying to say. When Mars and Venus are conjunct, especially if in the same sign, and yours are very close, extremely close, and they take part in the karmic, nodal story. So there was a challenge. There is and was a challenge from the second house. Something is really pushing a button there. And probably that's what's activating the moon. So, or the other way around, the moon is feeding.
And I will say I used to I was so carefree until I went through a conservatory of music where they were judging me so much. So, and then it was very hard for me to do well and express because I was just rippled by fear in my physical body. I had migraines, I had shaking. You can't sing when you're like that. And it wasn't till I had a purpose when I did my 20s in Ibiza, Spain, and I was a music teacher there and performer. And then when I had a purpose, because there was no electricity, I just blossomed. And I saw that I was holding everybody in my living room, even if there were hundreds of people. That's how it felt. And so if I could, but still I had to run out in the middle and throw up because I thought, how unlucky, I have a migraine the morning I'm supposed to perform. And I didn't, it's this subconscious fear I had of failing, I guess.
Sun in Aries in the first house, maybe for most of you, speaks volumes about how important it is to do your own thing, to be your own boss kind of thing, to not be too structured into other people's systems. And when we put that into the picture, I know many Aries people suffer from migraines. Again, I don't want to generalize.
I don't have them anymore. I was able to figure it out. Way back when, it wasn't very hard at all. Once I took responsibility that it wasn't just bad luck, that it was my deep fear, that I had to, comfort myself. I pretended there was a little person in my head that was in control, and I told that person to absolutely the morning of or the night before to make everything easy, not to let my body be tense, and it disappeared. I can't remember what year it was, but somewhere in my 40s or so, I started feeling much better about performing, or maybe even in my 30s. But that's what I was thinking of, that could be that tension of the South Node and the moon, that my emotions went into my physical body.
Yes.
And I couldn't stop until it became conscious, that I was able to find a technique to help myself.
When you were about 30 years old, is when your progress sun was on the Mars-Venus conjunction. If that rings any bell for something. And then just a few years after, it was on the Jupiter.
Yeah.
I think the progress sun is extremely significant, especially when your sun is, I think, powerfully positioned. It's in Aries in the first house. That sun is and also part of a grand trine connected to the moon. It's a very strong point, that sun. I don't know. I don't want to go too much into it, but yes. At the moment, your sun is on the IC. It's very interesting. The progress sun is exactly on the IC, which is a big event as well. This is the IC here.
Okay.
And the progress sun is right on top of it. So 9 degrees. You see, you've got your IC at 8 degrees, 44 minutes of Gemini. And at the moment, the progress sun is at 9 degrees Gemini.
Yes.
So actually last year, because it moves only 1 degree per year, very slowly. That's why it's so significant, because when the progress sun changes signs or changes houses or goes over, or somehow aspects something personal in the chart, then it's very powerful. Changing.
And what would it mean on the IC? What would that mean? Do you
something
think?
in the personal world, something very deeply, hiddenly personal. Could be to do with where you live and your home and so on, which is the generalized, description of the fourth house. It could have something to do with the parents, as this is the whole axis. IC, MC, when that's activated, these the parental houses basically. Could be that. Could be going back in the past to revisit memories, because this is the house also of personal memories, childhood memories, all sorts of things like that. Unfinished business in that area, or just generally inside work retrospection. Just to make a new basis for yourself. It's kind of trying to if you're trying to maybe think of how I want to spend the rest of my life, and what kind of lifestyle, what kind of house I want to live in, and maybe these things are changing now, and you're setting up, building foundation.
It could be that. I mean, I felt like I had reached the pinnacle in this spring for fabulous concerts I was giving. I had 4 lined up that were just like everything I worked for, and they all got canceled. And so it has caused a certain kind of, maybe I'm moving on to a new phase.
Looks like it.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Lauren, for sharing so much with us. Another one, tell me which chart shall I look at next?
Yours.
I don't want to, okay. Very briefly, just 5 minutes, because we've already looked at my chart and I didn't want to.
But with the 6 and Sun house, it would be interesting.
That's because you're
right?
curious, but otherwise I didn't. Okay, I
But
didn't.
I think it sounds like your chart is very appropriate to this discussion too.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Here you go. You
Well.
speak.
Okay.
Oh, maybe you have noticed in all the charts, I also include series. I watch series at the moment, so I want to include it there. This is my series, and we had it in all of the charts. So one extra thing there. That's a bit strange, but
Eris, you mean that? Are you saying Eris?
No,
Yeah.
Ceres. You know Ceres? The asteroids?
Oh, C-E-R-E-S. Yes. Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm. If any of you wants to give me any perspective on the Chiron in this chart, I would be grateful.
Yeah.
You see, I don't have an empty 12th house. I've got a Jupiter singleton there. So I've been a bit over exaggerating the lack of the 12 and the
You have a Jupiter Sun opposition then.
Yes, and that's the only opposition in the chart. just speak about anything that comes to your mind. I know the charts need a lot more time to study. It's not for the quick.
Is that a Uranus Saturn conjunction in the 7th?
Yeah.
Sorry.
And this is an exact aspect to Jupiter. You see, the Uranus and the Jupiter are having an exact sextile to the degree. It's a
How does that Uranus Saturn?
How is the Uranus?
I'm curious how that.
That's exactly what we discussed a lot in the Saturn discussion. So.
Oh yeah.
I'm using the opportunity to bring your interest to that discussion. I don't want to repeat the same, but maybe you will tell me something new. It's a lot to do with my relationships. They are, my partner is very Uranian, and I consider myself very Uranian as well. And there is the Saturn, very briefly, Saturn in the 7th typically connects me very well with older people throughout my life in any sort of setting. I kind of almost prefer naturally to talk to learn from, to kind of connect with on a personal level as well to older people. And I think this is coming from the Saturn in the 7th.
Are you saying other or older?
Older. But when I say other, I mean in the sense of other in terms of different. I'm kind of also quite tolerant to all sorts of differences, which may come from the Uranus. I don't know. But if somebody is strange, like strange looking or strange behaving, this doesn't put me off. Maybe that's the Scorpio and so much concentration on the 7th as well. And anyway,
but then that is also trying to the Jupiter in the 12th.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
What is it about the larger mentorship?
Yes, you see, I think also the 6th house planets always make us look for teachers and be teachers at the same time. Like this is Stephen Forrest says that any planet in your 6th house could be a potential someone outside in the world can embody that planet for you as a teacher for you, as a guide or whatever. So I have always had help during my lifetime so far. I'm quite young, but they've always been in the crucial moments when I needed, especially in terms of education and in terms of somebody stepping in or something stepping in as an influence, so I can learn from that. And I think with this concentration on the 6th house, I owe it to myself to be on the watch out for teachers. And that's why I read. I don't read actually that much. I read a lot less than I speak about it, because it's more about listening to what others have to say, if that makes sense. Listening to other astrologers, to other, as I'm picking up bits and pieces from each one of them and trying to compile my own method. Method is the 6th house keyword.
But that makes sense, I would think, with the Jupiter and the North Node in your 12th house as well.
Yeah, yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Like a funnel, like you're an open funnel to let that information come in, and then you can apply it.
Yes, exactly. That's the point. Kind of filling the funnel from the 6th house with all sorts of things. And then ideally, hopefully, I hope to be able to use the Jupiter as an expression. But I mean,
See, what I would say, looking at it, I would say one of the things very, very strong is your Mercury conjunction Pluto, and that would give you the deep ability to articulate your ideas and serve through speaking and leading like you are. And then I look at Jupiter in your 12th, it's like you have a blessing. You have Jupiter will give that your evolutionary meditative Piscean consciousness would be blessed, and through and you would gain naturally through all this ability to go very deep in Scorpio with those planets like Pluto in Scorpio and Mercury with it. Scorpio, your Venus, the way you feel in Scorpio, your Sun in Scorpio. So that depth gives you then the power to articulate and speak, because I look at that Mercury as your communicator. Yes. So you serve others through articulating, and then it blesses the growth in your 12th house.
Oh, thank you, Lauren. That's very nice of you. I always have been mostly, well, proud. I don't know whether we can be proud of anything in our charts because we have no influence to what was given to us as charts. Maybe we don't have, but I really like the Pluto Mercury conjunction. I really feel like this is the most energized point, and kind of in the middle of all the planets in the 6th house. It's like almost like a midpoint, more or less. And it's a bridge between the Sun and then the Venus only conjuncts the Moon. So the Moon only conjuncts Venus, but then Venus conjuncts Pluto and Mercury, and then Pluto and Mercury conjunct the Sun. So it's kind of a sequence there. But the Sun and the Moon are not conjunct. So that's what I find interesting. And then, Jupiter is my guardian angel. I've said it before. I consider Jupiter as a planet in the 12th as a potentially good luck in some way, but it's never working when you're passive. You have to act on it. And maybe this Aries there is telling me, if you don't initiate, if you don't get out of your comfort zone, if you don't, try to be in a leadership kind of position, as I don't feel that much inclined to be in that position. I'm a lot more private with this 6th house, but I'm trying to give a chance to the Aries and so that it can open up the Jupiter eventually as well. That's the idea, but I don't know, maybe not always working.
What did you want us to comment on that Chiron in the 1st house in Gemini? Did you want?
Well, I recently realized, because I was disregarding the Chiron, because my Chiron is not that strategically placed in the chart. As you see, it's maybe a bit of an outsider. It's opposite Uranus, but everybody has Chiron opposite Uranus nowadays. And it's opposite Neptune, which has to do with the nodal story. It's, square the nodes. It is important. I recognize it is important, but I don't understand it very well for myself yet. And I'm trying to see where is this wound. And I was thinking recently that I actually feel like, if I really have to be honest, I have an intellectual complex. Kind of Gemini kind of intellectual complex. It's not very severe. It's not very predominant. Maybe the Pluto conjunct Mercury helps that not being very visible. But I'm actually not very productive informationally. So I need to take my time. I'm kind of slow in terms of working through information, working through data. I eventually grasp it, and I grasp it quite deeply. But I need to go back to it, again and again and again. The same thing until it really kind of sticks in. Yeah. So I'm not that naturally smart in that typically Gemini way, where how people that are very quick-brained, very scientific liquid brain. They read something, they read, let's say, an article, and they immediately can reflect on it. Well, I need more time. And memory is not that good. You know, memory for my memory is very emotional. Mercury in Scorpio with Pluto. I don't forget emotional stuff, but I very much forget informational stuff. Reading a fiction book, I may be very involved emotionally with the story, with the characters, with everything, but 2 weeks after that, I will forget it. I will forget the plot. I don't know if any of you have a similar problem.
But I would imagine that with all the water feeling, and I still want to go back to that Jupiter and some of those trines, you know, and how you have the accessibility. Like, is it that you have a natural accessibility to feel out the wisdom of the universe? And so that really is the teacher that is accessible to you. Or is that the maybe that's the opposition that you're struggling with, even though there's the trine with that Uranus Saturn. So you naturally have the accessibility to the wisdom. So it's feeling it rather than thinking it. And I'm incredibly Mercury, so I can kind of relate to what you're talking about, because my Mercury is in the water house too.
Yes, well, that's very interesting, your perspective on that. And at the same time, I've always felt I do have this access that you're talking about, but something needs to be overcome. And this thing,
I would say with the Chiron in the first house in Gemini, you wouldn't be comfortable necessarily with the focus of attention on you.
Very well put, Lauren. Yes.
And that is what it's doing there. Is it points that out to me, is that you don't really like the mirror turned on yourself that much.
Yes.
Well, you didn't want to really show your chart either. So I think that just is a natural manifestation of that.
I'm not sure. I'm not that, you know, how can I say?
No, and I want to just say with that's part of it, but then it's trine to your sun, right?
Right, right.
Or it's sextile your sun.
It's sextile, yeah. Technically, it's sextile.
Sun. So it means it's still a skill that feeds your essential being.
Yes, yes.
But at the same time, I'm just saying, so it's not going to, and it doesn't have like all this weird, horrible stuff to it. It's just, I would say it would just give you a little, so maybe you don't feel like attention on you, or it just makes you a little like, oh my goodness, maybe they're spending too much attention on me.
I think, Lauren, it's an Aries problem, to put it shortly. I have an Aries problem. It's not that much about the attention, which is more of a Leo kind of thing in my mind. It's the Aries. So I have a weak Aries in general. Maybe not weak, it probably has potential there, but the moon is on the descendant, exactly. And that's too much of a very strongly people-oriented, you know, always adjusting to others instead of self-notice in the 6th in Libra. So Libra has a problem with this, always being, you know, the second fiddle to somebody else. There is always like a stronger personality that's giving the direction, and I'm more of a follower or more of a partner kind of thing. This is where I'm coming from. So obviously this North Node in Aries, and then repeated topic with Chiron in the first house. Yeah, you see the thread. The chart is too descendant, too much on others, too interested in other people, too self-forgetting. And I kind of don't remember to look at myself. It's not that I'm not interested or about the attention, but it's more about this initiation. You know how you are an Aries, you know best how good you are in this constant initiation. You seem like a very good teacher, potential teacher, as you've got Sun in Aries in the first house, and that's exactly the kind of thing I need.
I love to teach.
I have so many Arians in my life that are teachers to me, like not directly teachers, but like I see the example of having to be more concerned about moving forward, traveling on my path, initiating things, and so on, and not constantly adjusting to the environment. Yeah. But you spotted it very well. I think the Chiron has to do with that. Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. I mean, it really is a lot of, it's not because, my sixth house wants to help you with your charts, and it's very interested in you. So not that I'm not interested in my one, but yeah, I should get a reading. Who wants to give me a reading? I've never had a reading, apart from with an astrologer in London a few years back, on whom I was spying to understand how he does revocation charts. And I didn't really want to have a reading. I wanted to learn about revocation charts, but it turned out very interesting, actually. Yeah, but this makes me think I should approach one of you or some of you for a reading. If you want to do an exchange.
Also, as we do this, you should put your chart up and let us feel free to make what we see and comment.
Yeah, I mean, now is the time, actually. Now is the time. I mean, this wasn't planned, but go ahead, and if anyone else wants to comment, I would be very happy. And I'll let you go after that because it's already almost 8, but I'm happy to stay more if you want. So.
It's interesting that you have Chiron going through your 12th house in Aries at the moment. How have you been experiencing that, if at all?
Not only, but also when it was exactly on the nodes, the transiting Chiron here. I was also going through at the same time the second, I think it is, square of Chiron to its own place. So the second Chiron square.
Mm.
Yeah, so it was a really Chiron themed period, I would say, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Mostly activating the nodal axis and all the questions around the nodes, how to balance the nodes, how to, work out this dilemma of too much partnership against too little individuality in some cases. And, Neptune is also related, but let's not overcomplicate it. Yeah. What did you experience, Gabriela, in this Chiron? When you said you had something similar going on?
No, just that we were talking about Chiron being in the first house of Aries, and obviously
yes.
now, but yeah, it definitely feels like something around doing that inner exploration of the 12th house, and with Jupiter being there, like being an inner explorer and an explorer of your own subconscious. Mm-hmm. And that then feeding into what you're able to offer through the 6th house, I feel.
Yes. Maybe it will be interesting for you that I have a disproportionately big number of teachers on both sides of the family, but not just parents not actually, yeah, parents as well, but many years back, generations back, and I didn't know about this until recently, as I met my father late in life when I was 30 for the first time, and I got to the information about the stories of that side of the family, and there seemed to be a lot of people that were teachers, like involved in schools a lot. And
that's amazing.
Very many on both sides, not just the father side, but it's yeah. I mean, this is I see this as Jupiter, like planets in the 12th house. Very often, I think, point to the baggage, the luggage, that we come to this lifetime with, some sort of given by the family history many years back as a condition, and I almost feel like I need to build onto it. Ever since I was really, really young, before school years, I was very inclined towards teaching of anything, to explaining something to people, and to this was a very natural role. I kind of knew I wanted to do that. I just didn't know what I want to teach yet. So, yeah, I don't know. Dwayne, you wanted to say something earlier.
Yeah, we periodically dip into the astrological mandala, the Sabian symbols. And,
I know more of mine, but tell me which one is interesting to you.
Well, I'm just responding to your request for more about Chiron.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you're aware of the symbol.
The candy
but,
shop. Was it a candy shop or something?
No, it's the first mockingbird of spring.
Oh yeah.
It seems that you're called to be that. And as far as I can see, you certainly are. You know, you've risen to the occasion, and you're consolidating many streams of consciousness into your own worldview, and you're expressing it in such a way that it's very refreshing and uplifting to a lot of people. And all your coordination of our group, you know, just bringing us all together. This is a global conversation we're having. It's really wonderful. I just wanted to share a little bit of what Rudyard had to say.
Please.
Keynote: the creative exuberance of the human soul in response to basic life experiences. You certainly seem like an exuberant soul to me.
Really?
Very passionate.
That's such a big compliment, because I actually on the inside I'm not. That's a big contradiction. I guess because this Gemini sign is totally intercepted in the first house, and it mixes up so much, even though I have a Taurus ascendant. Gemini is part of it as well, a big deal, I think. And you see how Chiron is the last step there. And the second house starts from 0 Cancer in my chart. So the whole Gemini is making that impression of, many people tell me, but why do you say you are depressive and, you know, a Scorpionic type depressive? Well, you're actually very talkative and you're very communicative. Well, this is more coming out now in these situations that we speak together. And so when I have a mirror in the face of another person. But generally, on a personal level, Gemini is a very weak spot for me. That's how I feel it. Both me and my partner, and we've been like the Scorpio couple for a very long time, have lots of common energies. We have a composite chart with South Node, North Node in Gemini in the 3rd house. So we have kind of a Gemini problem going on in my world, in my personal world and in my total world, you know. So yeah, not being able to enjoy the moment, being too how can I say, something is disconnecting from this quick-witted movement, you know. The lightness of Gemini is not there with me very much. Sometimes it is, sometimes it comes up, but yeah, thank you so much for the kind words, Gwen.
I would see the referring to your mind as like with a Pluto conjunct Mercury, there's also a compulsiveness and obsessiveness to your almost delegating quickly to the mind.
Yes.
And so I think that fits into your discussion of yourself, that you were trying to be more, even with the Taurus as your ascendant, you're learning in this life to be perhaps more grounded, and that the mind wouldn't quickly be, what do you call it when you defer something quickly to the mind? Like you have something quickly to say versus really what, you know, letting it sort of seep through.
Actually, well, Lauren, what you're saying, I've always connected, this is definitely a problem of mine. I'm very rash very often in my communication. But don't you connect that with Mars conjunct South Node in Libra? You know how Mars in Libra is very argumentative. It loves a good argument. It loves to discuss and to constantly, you know, give you the ball and want to play with the ball, figuratively speaking. And I have obviously something to balance there, to overcome there from before. I imagine myself as having been, I don't know, criminal lawyer or something in my previous time. And I needed to react very quickly and support the argument and be very like, in this way. But nowadays, it's not helping me very much, that strategy. As a lot of times, things need more time, as you said, to settle. I don't think this is necessarily a tendency of Mercury conjunct Pluto, as that's the opposite. This wants to go deep, and this wants to investigate deep. It doesn't start reflecting back. until it's got the chance to feel comfortable with the information. That's I think the slowliness of exploration that I was talking about before. Also, the Mercury is retrograde. So you know how retrograde Mercuries are not very quick reacting. So Mars is letting me down here, I believe. Mars is the one that's, too quickly jumping, provoked to respond and to have an argument or to have a discussion. Yeah, I don't know. But I mean,
I would have thought Mars in Libra would give you a good power to deliberate and to be judicial and see both sides of things until you come to balance. And I thought of the Mercury and Pluto as, I think I've noticed Pluto can cause kind of obsessive behavior.
Very much, especially. And I realize that if I don't choose very specifically what to obsess in, and something that will be meaningful and something that will be, then I would inevitably have to obsess in something else that won't be that good, because the energy just doesn't go away. You need to somehow do something with it. And because it's the sixth house, I thought, well, this makes sense to be work, because if it's not work, it will be wrongly applied in a way. But you're right about the Mars. But you know how the South Node and the circumstances around the South Node, like your moon there with your South Node, is always a very big ability, talent, natural talent. But at the same time, it doesn't work automatically well. So you are letting yourself down with your own talents. That's what happens with the South Node. So I always bear in mind that my Mars needs to be adjusted. I used to be very rash in my, when there is a discussion, one-to-one, Libra, one-to-one, and disagreement. So much, I philosophize too much. I psychologize too much, Pluto with Mercury. And all the Scorpio is too aggressively attacking the other person sometimes without even noticing. Yeah, and the Mars is behind that.
Huh.
Yeah, there is.
I wanted to ask about what a mockingbird means to you.
I always connect it with a book, To Kill a Mockingbird for some reason. Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I gotta run. I really wanted to do a meditation for you guys, but I have to.
I'm so sorry. I thought we were staying until 8:30, and I thought you were gone for some reason.
Yes, I was supposed to be gone, but I'm running a bit late. But I would have loved to do a meditation.
I haven't told them. We thought with Daya that she, wanted to. I actually asked her to do at the end of the session a meditation. I don't know if it's going to be a guided meditation or something else. You say, Daya. But do you guys want to do it next time, or this time now? If you are free.
Can you do 5 minutes?
The thing is, I'm running out, so I don't think I'll be able to do it now. But let's do it next time. No, it's a really, I have quite a few meditations I can do, but the one I do I really love. It's a 12th house where we ask a question about something that we don't have an answer for, that we've been trying to figure out in our life, and we're sort of confused. And we'll go deep inside the unconscious and find the answer within us. Pretty cool.
Ooh. Sounds very interesting. But even though we will have another topic next week, it doesn't matter. We can still do it next week.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it.
We can do it in the beginning so that we have energized ourselves in the beginning of and attuned to talking and so on. Yeah, so we do that beginning of next time.
Yes.
Great.
Oh, that's
I'm
great.
sorry that we diverged too much. You see, that's what my sixth house is so worried about. That.
No. It's been a beautiful talk. I've been listening all of this time, getting ready. It's been beautiful. It's just that I gotta leave. But thank you, beautiful souls, for meeting you all. You're awesome.
You were great today, Daya. You had so interesting things to share. So I'm very grateful.
Thank you, Radilina.
Yeah, I want to say, Daria, it was really interesting listening to what you were saying. I felt like I could relate completely, having such a big 12th house. That it was, it was really, really good to listen to you and just have that kind of understanding go through. So thank you.
Oh, yes, you're welcome. You're welcome. It's been a pleasure sharing it.
To encourage you, Daria, to go on with this idea that we discussed recently, the videos, doing really well, speaking. No, I didn't have an impression before, but yes, please do it if you want. And I will help you with the editing.
Thank you. Radilina is my biggest fan. I love her so much. Thank you for being in my life.
Yeah.
Take care, everyone.
See you later. Yeah. Okay. Anything else here, or do you want to do some other chart or finish for the day? What do you want to do?
I just wanted to ask Dwayne that question of what the mockingbird means to him.
Oh, yeah.
Because he brought up that Sabian Sybil, and I never quite understood it. Why you brought it up, and I don't even know what the characteristics are of a mockingbird.
I directly experience mockingbirds each spring where I live here. Okay. And they come usually in May. And for me, it's a signal to go out to the hills and harvest bitterroot, which is a healing plant that is in abundance in this area. And it was very highly regarded by the native people for thousands of years here. So for me, it's that wonderful resonance with the natural environment that is there if I want to open to it. And it's just, mockingbirds are just fabulous in that respect. So when I translate that to my relationship with you, Radlina, just this week, seeing some of the things you've been posting, it alerted me to a movement in consciousness of people of a different generation than me, the younger generation, and it kind of inspired me to bring myself forward a little bit more in that particular realm, especially around the notion of revolution, and big changes. And I really see you as an exemplar of the younger generation, really taking responsibility for their own lives and transforming the status quo, moving beyond the status quo and into a more holistic orientation to life. And I think probably other people would support that notion.
Well, that's such a big compliment to me. I really love the way you see it, because I noticed your Jupiter in the 6th house. Is it right? I think we can, how I personally see that as you can be in the role of the teacher for the younger people. Yeah, younger people kind of live in your 6th house, similar how older people live in my 7th house in a way. And I have no problem to connect in this way. Not just that I don't have a problem, I seek that. I would be very grateful for that. So, and not everyone here, especially, I'm amazed how many, at the same time, how many of you from the older generation, we're talking about 40s and 50s here, which I never expected. I never expected people from so far back to join me. And you haven't been...
Or I'm in the 60s now.
Yeah. I don't know. It's and you are so ahead of your time, people. So you're so modern people. You're not, people from the past in any way. You're even more adequate than maybe 90% of youngsters nowadays. So, and in any sense of the word, which is very inspiring to me. Very inspiring.
Like you said, you're able to, you want to be with different types of people. So do I. I can be close with someone. I'm close with an 8-year-old. I'm close with a 6-year-old. I don't care what age a person is. I'm looking at the soul. Yeah,
very much. And the chart, I'm sure if we start examining, before every meeting, I've got all your charts and, put them in a folder. And I briefly look at them and I see so many connections. Either there is a pattern, there are many people with particular houses, and how come we have come together? This was completely random. completely randomly somebody sees something. My biggest, how can I say, I'm the biggest fan of the idea, and that's how I try to do everything I do, is to just do your work, put something out there, in an Aries fashion, just throw something out there and see what happens. Don't chase people, don't target anyone, don't have this marketing where you target a particular group or something like this. Just do what you are, how you are, and offer it. And those people that are for you, for every astrologer, I think this holds true, however you're doing your astrology or whatever, let others come to you through your own things. And that's sixth house as well, I believe. That's the essence of the sixth house. To just don't care about the publicity of it, the public image. Just do your work, and the other thing follows naturally. Yeah.
Do I dare ask? Because I'm contemplating that right now. That's right in front of me, about trying to generate new things. And I don't know. I know we're really late, but my chart is so. What you guys are talking about and how it fits in. It's fascinating how we've all come together at this time. But I'm trying to market myself, and I'm struggling because I'm not finding clients. So it's but I'm not I have a problem with the Aries energy. So I don't,
Laura, why don't we, you gave me a great idea. Why don't we make a meeting once, maybe not next time, but once if you want, and give each other just general advice, share experiences about this, how to work as an astrologer, let's say, or how to do, it doesn't have to be just astrology. It could be your, for example, the tarot reading or whatever you're doing, and share tips with each other about that.
Yeah.
And give advice to each other or something.
Yeah.
Would you like to do that?
Please.
That's such a sixth house exercise, and 12th house in action. Yeah.
It's fascinating.
I mean, I would love to share a lot of things, which maybe some of them will be applicable just to me and not that much to you, but maybe some of other things could be valuable to you. So I don't know.
Yes. Yeah.
And we are not in competition with each other in any way. We are all I really like that opportunity to be free in our expression, because nobody is competing with anybody else, or nobody is, we are helping each other. That's the point, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's fascinating how all these charts are intertwined, and being able to learn from one another is really great.
Yeah.
The most surprising thing for me is I don't relate to yet your choice of how you do the wide houses, and so that's different ways to read and different ways to do it. You have what you call the campanus.
No, that's nothing to do with campanus, actually. I think you asked me, Lauren, the reason why the chart looks like this is because here, if I go one step back, what I was doing before, the previous times, which you saw, here you see it says chart drawing style.
Angio, okay.
Angle with zodiac or something like that is what I'm using now, this one. But if you go to the default one, the web default style or the Astrodane style, the first several ones here. Actually, let's do the default. It looks this way. And we can still see that the houses are, we can still see that my 6th house and 12th house are huge, in the chart, compared to, say, the 8th house and the 2nd house and so on. But our attention is not that focusing on this, with this format. The calculations are the same because the component system is still used here. But we are here in this chart, we see more the zodiac than we see, and almost like these planets are minor factors. They are in the zodiac. My planets are somewhere in the zodiac wheel. Well, in the other one, we've got a concentration on where is the action taking place, the houses. So
it's just the way that I've trained myself to see. It's just adjustment. That's all.
No,
I like the way I like the way I make my charts, and I'm able to. They speak to me then.
Yes, absolutely.
So I'm still learning what your language is of what speaks to you. Is what I'm trying.
To be honest, I'm not used to this.
What?
To be honest, I'm very much not used to this. This is new to me. I'm also still struggling. With a few of you here, we're doing this course in London where they use this format without the zodiac. The most famous software for astrology calculations. Is it Astro Gold or is it something else? I don't know. I forgot at the moment the name, but it's using this sort of.
Or Astrofire?
Solar Fire, yes, Solar Fire. So they obviously base the whole course on Solar Fire and everything, and they have the chart looking like, so it's just this, without the zodiac. It's just this. And throughout the course, I've been always struggling to read it because I'm more used to the other one, the one with the zodiac.
So you understand that I'm not used to your presentation. It's harder for me to read it.
Oh no, that's fair enough, because everyone should choose their own way. Everyone, I think, should choose their own style. I'm not trying to convince you to use this one. I just
no, I just am learning what it even is. How to look at it.
Radically changed my style this week because I realized that I'm not doing myself service in chart reading and so on if I don't see this option, with the houses. And but then for my own ease, I added the zodiac. Yeah, so that's like a in between the two.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, I hope you can experiment with these styles here. There is something called Liz Green style, which is very strange. That looks like this. It's almost like the first one, but without that many colors. Maybe this one is designed to concentrate our attention on the aspects. Yeah, because the aspects are colorful, but the wheel is not colorful. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's just different preferences of how we look. We have different tarot decks. We have different, we all gravitate towards different ways that speak to us. Yeah. I just that I was just making a comment. And I do have Mercury retrograde. I like you do, with the slower sometimes to react.
Yeah, it's not less smart. The Mercury retrograde in general is just a different way of processing information. I think that's been my conclusion. But as you said, we have all sorts of different styles and so on, and that's meant to be a reflection of who we are, our own charts and so on. This reminds me of maybe one final word about the sixth house, is that if you have a lot of sixth house, I believe you need to make an effort to put the stamp of your personality, your energies, into the physical reality of what you do, so that the two meet somewhere, and the two are very truthful reflections to each other. So that's one of the reasons I try to very carefully choose everything I choose. There needs to be a meaning, something, not meaning like a general big truth, but something that is fitted to me. Yeah, as otherwise I see it doesn't work. But the moment I somehow intuit what's the right way to fit the internal reality with the external reality, then things somehow magically start manifesting for me. That's just an observation on the sixth house at the end. No. Yeah. Okay. I feel like I totally monopolized our discussion today, and that's not good. Not last week, but the Chiron one, and yes, the Chiron one last week, and the Uranus one, if you haven't listened to it. The Uranus discussion is my favorite so far, and I published 1 hour of it, for the public to see.
And that would be on Sixth Seed. Is that where we would find it?
On YouTube. Yeah, I have a channel on YouTube where everything is.
What is it called?
Sixth Seed, yes.
Okay, thank you.
My point is that the Uranus discussion was very varied. There are inputs from so many different people in many different almost like giving the word to each other. So I love that one. Next time I'm going to try to balance this and not speak so much. Which topic would you like for next week? Shall we do houses again, or go back to signs, or to something else completely different?
Well, it seems like there's been so much on the Chiron in the 6th and 12th house, and there's so much similarity between our charts. This group. So I don't know if there's some other commonality that still needs to be addressed. I don't know. And why are we all coming together at this time with these charts?
I'd be interested in people's impressions more about aspects like the yod, the squares, the oppositions, the trines, and the and what people experience with those aspects. Is that what they're all called aspects, right?
Yes. And those patterns, the chart patterns that develop out of the aspects, the big trines, the magic rectangles, and all those sorts of things. And this is an amazing topic.
Down to the elements, a square, a yod. I guess a yod is a formation.
A yod is a formation, yes.
Well, the two quincunx with the sextile.
Yes.
But anyway, that would be interesting to me is the energy. I love aspects. I'm geometry all over the place. That's what pops up.
Yeah. That's the energy behind the chart. That's what activates the chart, isn't it? It's so important.
It's, to me, my favorite thing about them.
Okay, let's do a talk on aspects.
That was just a suggestion.
No, I love it. If you want, I mean, let others say, but I think we can also make this very important distinction of how the squares are different on each side, and it's not the same square, and many things around the aspects that can be brought into it that are not typical.
If other people also agree, I mean, how about you, Dwayne or Gabriella?
What do you agree?
Yes, okay.
Yeah, I agree. I just found out that I had a yod in my chart the other week from one of the talks. So I'm interested in finding out more about that as well.
Me too.
The yod is important. Before I say goodbye to you, I wanted to show you what Auti is talking about. Because it's a unique thing. I've never seen something like that before. You see, her node is not very obvious, but I'll show you. Yod, sorry. Pluto, top of the yod.
Oh, yeah.
14th degree something, of Scorpio. Then we've got 3 planets on the same degree. Mercury, Venus, and Sun.
Wow.
The quincunx here. The same degree as Pluto. And then we've got Mars, same degree. You see? So Mars, exact sextile to the 3 planets in Aries.
Yeah.
And the top of the yod here. So if you want, we can explore her chart and try to uncover what this Pluto may be about. And if you want to share something back, we can use it as an example for a yod next time.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, that's a very powerful yod, isn't it? It's not just a yod. That's something special. Okay?
And that's in Scorpio too.
And that's in Scorpio. Pluto is Scorpio, yeah. And kind of a singleton on that side of the chart. And yeah, many things around it I can see. Pluto makes other aspects as well. So yeah. Anything else? Any comments, questions for you? And shall we say goodbye until next week? We're doing aspects.
Okay, thank you.
I'm really enjoying the fact that we have a vector of intention together.
Yes.
This last week has been very rich for me, based on anticipating this meeting.
Really?
And I dove deeper into my chart than I have in quite some time, and it's just great. I just love what we're doing. So.
Oh, I'm so pleased. I'm very happy. I'm very happy about that. And also when I first started emerging out and taking the courage to go out and do a talk, let's say, or whatever, I didn't know what I was going to be talking about. You know, I chose a topic which I was interested to learn. And in this particular week before the talk, so they were weekly, my talks in the beginning, I did them over the weekend. So, and always chose the next topic from the previous week. And I used that whole week to prepare, to read about it, to think about it. And it was like going on a journey during one whole week, totally immersing myself in that topic. Yeah, and that's how I was overcoming my Chiron complex, you know, Chiron in Gemini complex. But I really didn't have the preparation before that week. And it was so intense and so interesting having to prepare. Yeah. And we're having the same now. I do the same with this, but yeah.
Beautiful.
Love to hear that you're going through the same. Thank you.
I would really
I look forward. Yes, Lauren?
I'd appreciate a recording of this one if you wouldn't mind.
Of course, no problem.
Okay.
No problem. I was just thinking at some point nobody's watching them, but
I would really like one of this one today.
Okay.
I wanted someone to repeat again, but I didn't want to say, please repeat it.
All right, no problem. I'm going to do it. You're going to have it over the weekend, the latest. And I'm now very happy that I have, since about a month ago, I've got a much more powerful computer, and it's working through these things very quickly. So yeah, I promise I'll do that for you, and I'll give you a link. I'll send you an email like last time with the link, so you can watch it.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody, too.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
See you next week.
Fantastic.
Bye. Bye.